Hey, Mark here. I just wanted to give you a quick heads up. So, while recording this episode, we had some pretty major technical difficulties, and the audio on this episode is not up to the normal movies, films, and flicks par. However, Doug and I had a wonderful conversation about zombies in movies. We had a fun tournament. We talked about just every zombie in cinema you could possibly think of. So, it's a lot of fun. So, just please excuse the audio, enjoy the episode, and we hope you enjoy. And once again, sorry for the recording. But yeah, enjoy. We'll see you next week. Thanks. Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is Doug Syracuse Bremen.
I like that.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about zombies, and you got Tallahassee, Columbus, Wichita, all those people in Zombieland, so I'm like, might as well give them that. I forgot to give myself a name, though. I don't have a nickname. I guess I would just be Sheboygan or Milwaukee.
I think you would be the thank you guy or the thanks.
Thanks.
Right?
Mark, thanks.
Thanks.
Where are you from? Thanks. So what he's talking about is we worked together at Comic-Cons for years. And while we were working together, we're both, like Doug and I were also big movie fans. So I brought him in for this impromptu zombie tournament. And this is going to be tough. This is really going to hurt us, isn't it?
Yeah. This is, you've got to start making some tough decisions down the road. It's like the 10 movies we picked are great zombie movies. In and of themselves, they all have their like good points, maybe some not good points as far as like following the story and characters and the actors, but as a general rule, every single movie that we're going to talk about is a great movie, and it's about zombies.
And so we know that there are hundreds of zombie movies, and there's zombie TV shows, the Santa Clarita Diet. There is Kingdom on Netflix, which I love. I mean, there's Walking Dead. How can I even forget that? And then the spin-off that I stopped watching. The what's the spin-off of Walking Dead? Man, I don't even remember the name of it. But yeah, so you have all the, like, there's so many. I mean, you even have White Zombie from back in the day with the kind of voodoo zombies. We're not including that in this one. We're just going to start with 10 movies. And so I'm going to read these 10 movies out. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to have a tournament. We're going to see who's the winner. Doug and I are going to talk about our favorite zombies, what scares us the most, what would be the biggest pain in the butt to deal with. So the 10 movies we picked are Zombieland, Return of the Living Dead, Resident Evil, Paul W.S. Anderson's film, the video game adaptation, Dawn of the Dead, the remake. Then we have Shaun of the Dead, Warm Bodies, 28 Days Later, World War Z, Train to Busan, and 1968's The Night of the Living Dead. And what I love about these is I think we fell into, while researching all these zombies, they're all different. I don't think we have any here that are the same. Do you? Like, they're all very different.
Yeah, it's funny because, we're going to talk about the original Night of the Living Dead and how the storyline is how to deal in all these movies. How do you deal with that threat? Mm-hmm. And I feel like as we look at these movies, you're going to see that, some of those movies, the zombies are terrifying. They're just, they're dangerous. They pose a threat to everyone. And then in some of them, like, I'll just give you a perfect example, Shaun of the Dead, it's more of, they're just there as part of the story.
Yeah.
And they're different from the ones in Night of the Living Dead, and that's different from World War Z. So it's going to be interesting to talk about the differences of these movies, but at the same time, I did some research, did a lot of little known facts, and, really you can trace a lot of this back to that original Romero Night of the Living Dead. That was basically the starting point. And you look at all these movies, somewhere in there, you can see the influence of Romero's original classic.
And so, I teach film studies. Well, I haven't since the pandemic, but, I'll go back to it. But they, what I love about Night of the Living Dead 68 is how they were winging it. Like, Romero and crew, they didn't know. And Romero's not a micromanager. So he told a lot of the zombies, hey, just do your thing. Like, do what you think you should do. In the beginning of the movie, right, when her brother, they're coming to get you, Barbara, is attacked, that guy runs and picks up a rock. And you don't see that later on, because then they just become these slow-moving zombies. So that movie changes its rules, because they were just a bunch of Pittsburgh people making a movie on the cheap. And so that movie, alongside, I mean, like, I know White Zombie came before it, but we're just saying that, like, Night of the Living Dead 68 really influenced what was to come. And they influenced it by just being kind of loosey-goosey into what zombies are. And I love that these people just say, yeah, that looks fine. And now that's what we have 50 years later. I mean, more than that. Like, it blows my mind, and I love it.
Yeah, and, when we get to Night of the Living Dead and we talk about, maybe some little-known facts about that, it's going to transition to a lot of what we came up with as far as how are we going to rate these zombie movies, because if you go just on one subjective thing, we're not doing what's the scariest zombie movie, or we're not doing what is the zombie movie that's had so much social commentary on the United States. We're doing an overall, which one of these is the best overall, considering maybe it has some strengths here and some weaknesses here, but in reality, they're all, like I said, they're all great movies.
So I came up with a list, and I want to see what you think about this. I came up with 2 lists, but I'll read one now, and then I'll read one after the break. But I came up with my list of, so I had long-term dealing with them, and I had short-term dealing with these things. And this is going to sound crazy to some people, but you want to read my short-term zombies that, like, from ranking from 1 to 10 that I would not want to mess with to, I like, 1 is the worst, 10 is the best. They're all terrible, right? It's all the end of the world. But here's, like, number 1's the ones I would not want to run into. Do you want to hear the ranking?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so I got, and this isn't our tournament. I just want to let you know where I stand with these movies. So at first, 28 Days Later. We'll get into that later, but these are things. Number 1, I don't want them the day of. Like, so when this thing starts, I don't want them anywhere near me. These are the last things I want in a zombie apocalypse. Then I have Return of the Living Dead, World War Z. I have Dawn of the Dead, Train to Busan, Zombieland, Resident Evil, Warm Bodies, Shaun of the Dead, and the Night of the Living Dead. So if anything broke out, I would want it to be the Night of the Living Dead zombies the most. I feel like I would have a better chance getting out of a city with them than I would with the 28 Days Later. And now listen, we're being very loose with our term zombies. I just want everyone to know this. If you're throwing stuff at the wall, we have zombies in air quotes. It's viral zombies. It's the hell is full, so they're brought back, or an asteroid comes by. We're being very loose with that term here. But yeah, so those are my 10. Because I don't know. Those 28 Days Later zombies, the way they spit blood and the way it gets in you, and you turn immediately. That's, in World War Z, they can spit on you, but you don't really turn. You have to get bit. Jerry proves that later on. So they're less frightening to me automatically.
Yeah, because that zombie, that was like another little known fact that once we get into talking about that scene where Brad Pitt's fighting off the zombie and the zombie kind of like bleeds on him. And his first reaction as the main character in the story is to make sure his family's safe. So he runs to the edge of the building and he's thinking like, is it going to hit me? Am I infected? And he's saying, if I do get infected, because he knows the approximate incubation period, he's going to jump to save his family.
Jerry's the best, isn't he? Jerry in World War Z, played by Brad Pitt. He's the best. I love that guy.
And I think he has the best solution to any zombie problem in that he tries to educate himself.
He
tries to like come up with a plan, and ultimately he learns through traveling the world and trying to find out how everyone's dealing with this, which is related to the book, but it obviously isn't the same as the book. Mm-hmm. His job is to figure out the solution to the zombie problem.
I love it.
And it's interesting because if I think of like Brad Pitt and Troy, I think of this like athletic, heroic guy. But in that movie, it's not like Brad picks up a machine gun and starts mowing down the army and that saves the day. That's not what saves the day. Mm-hmm. What saves the day is him doing research and getting that knowledge to be able to defeat this threat. I like to call them threats only because, there's a lot of threats and there's a lot of things in this world that can hurt you. And the zombies in and of themselves pose, depending on the movie, depending on the director, pose different levels of threat to us. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. Night of the Living Dead, back in the day was terrifying to me. However, you watch it now and you're like, I'm in good shape. I could outrun all those zombies. I would make it. I would make it in that world.
Especially the 98 version, or 90 version, where Barbara is a completely different character, and she's just saying to everybody, we can walk around them. And she walks outside and just starts walking around them.
Yeah, and she's problem solving like Jerry did in World War Z. It's not enough just to have a bunch of guns and take these things out. It's really more important about, like, every one of these movies, people are trying to come up with a solution to the problem, and some are successful, and some are really not.
Are you ready to get into this tournament?
Absolutely, man. I'm ready.
All right, so we picked 10. 16's way too much. We've done that before, and we've had to split it up into 2 episodes. So we just said, let's do 10, which means some of them have to go an extra round before making it in. So some get a little bit of a bye, some don't. But I put these 10 into a random bracket generator, and they spit out what we have here. Because you and I both decided it would be totally objective to figure out the rankings, so I just said, let it fly. I mean, there's going to be a winner anyway. So I put them in, and the random generator, they generated a random bracket, and this is what we have. So the first round, right, we have Zombieland, versus Return of the Living Dead. Now, at first glance, man, I was like, this is a home run. But then I started thinking about Zombieland 2, and it got a lot different for me. I don't know if you had that same reaction.
I don't want to sound biased here, but I am such a big fan of Return of the Living Dead that to me, it was easier for me to pick that round than I think some of the other rounds or the matchups that I see in this bracket. So for me, it was a little bit easier because I have sort of a love-hate relationship with Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, got it. So, like, for me, though, with these Zombielands, I mean, so they said that these things were, like, well, Mad Cow became Mad Person, became Mad Zombie. It's a fast-acting virus that left you with a swollen brain, a raging fever, it made you hateful, violent, and gave you a really, really, really bad case of the munchies. So that's what Jesse Eisenberg says as Columbus. And they're deadly enough in the first one. They run, they have some level of intelligence. But in the second one, we learn that in the years following, there's homers. So they're the dumbest variation, and they're capable of running. The next are the Hawkings. They're much smarter variant of zombie, possessing a degree of problem solving to get their next meal. So they know how to bash a window. They know how to go around another corridor. Then you have the ninjas. A much faster and stealthier variant of zombie is the ninja. Though not very durable, they make up for it in speed and ambush tactics. That's the last thing you need with the zombie, is it knowing ambush tactics. Jeez Louise. And then you have the T-800s. A much more powerful zombie comes in the form of the T-800. Unlike the typical zombies, T-800s can take much more abuse and are so named after the series 800 Terminator. So, obviously, you can still kill all of them by shooting them in the brains. You can take them out. But that just added a wrinkle for me. These aren't just fast zombies. These things are learning through the years. And so even though, the Return of the Living Dead zombies and, what do they get injected with? They're 2,4,5 Trixium? Trioxin?
Yeah.
And so you have, listen, I think it's Return of the Living Dead that's going to move through just because they're unkillable. But the Zombieland zombies will put up a fight, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And, it's funny that you talked about it. I didn't find anything related to, as far as if Return of the Living Dead had in any way inspired Zombieland, because obviously directors, they go to these other movies and they're like, man, I really like that part of their story regarding zombies. Mm-hmm. And because Return was really the first movie that featured running, sprinting zombies.
Yeah.
Before that, we didn't have that.
Yep.
And I feel like, it's funny that, when you talked about little known facts, I did some research, and one of my favorite scenes in Zombieland is when they go to Bill Murray's mansion.
Yeah.
I love that from start to finish. But I found out, did you know this, that Patrick Swayze was almost considered to play that cameo?
Oh, that'd have been beautiful.
Could you imagine? And as it was written up for the information I read, originally their plan was somebody was going to find the potter's wheel and sit down, just at the thing, and that the zombie Patrick Swayze was going to come from behind, like they did in the movie Ghost.
Oh, that would have been
That
beautiful.
was going to be the pun, was somebody sitting at this pottery thing looking at it, and then Patrick Zombie